want to make sure, again, as I said, that we honor everyone's time. I see a lot of familiar faces in my screen. I'd like to say welcome. I am Sharon Williams, and I am the Hudson Valley Agape Director. And I will be one of the facilitators for this evening's session on parental regulation. Sharing this time with me is my colleague from the Hudson Valley, Kylie Regan. Thanks, Kylie, for waving. And we will alternate through the course of this session as the lead facilitator. Wanted to let you all know, I'm sure that you have attended a number of these monthly seminars. This is sort of a combination of information that has been shared in previous sessions, but we're going to be looking at parents specifically, not their children, not that, but us as parents, and how our behavior really can impact the behavior of our children. So we're going to go through a course of discussion. Please feel free, if you have any questions, to place them in the chat. Kylie and I will be reviewing that and be able to answer questions. We may answer questions as we're presenting. We may also wait toward the end, but please do not hesitate to get a question in there. And if you have a burning question that you need answered right then, please do just raise your hand and let us know. I will be honest with you, with our newfangled sort of technology, I am not able to see all of you on my screen. So if you can use the reaction button, it is at the lower end of your screen if you'd like to raise your hand, and that way we'll be able to acknowledge you if you don't put it into the chat room. So we appreciate your efforts. So this evening, we're talking about finding calm, but not for our children, as I mentioned before, for ourselves. And how do we look at those experiences that may occur where we may be involved in an explosive situation with our young one, and how do we keep ourselves grounded and in the moment? And so we're going to talk a little bit about what we are seeing and what we are doing and how it impacts us. Kylie?
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for joining us tonight. So we're going to be talking at first, just going over some expectations for our session. These should be, kind of self-explanatory, but we like to cover them anyway. Because we will be talking about potentially sensitive subject matter, we want to make sure that we all respect each other and listen, with an empathetic ear. So if for some reason there's a disagreement or anything that, is brought up, please feel free to include in the chat and we'll be happy to kind of answer anything. Confidentiality, we might be sharing information in here. Again, I want to reiterate that this information tonight is going to be recorded. So please, if you're going to be sharing anything about your family or anything, please, try to keep it as, please just try to keep that in mind as you're sharing that this is recorded. 3, take care of yourself. We are talking about overall very positive, strategies for parental regulation, but being a parent is difficult. And we want to recognize that if anything we talk about tonight, triggers you or just you start to feel a little overwhelmed, stand up, go get some water, do whatever you need to do for you. And even outside of our presentation tonight, take care of yourself. We're going to be talking a lot about self-care towards the later part of our session. Sharon's going to be doing that bit, but please try to emphasize, I'm going to emphasize taking care of yourself. And then lastly, is be curious, be open to, what we're kind of talking about tonight, be curious towards, your own lived experiences, what you're experiencing now, what your kids are experiencing, etc. So I think these 4, again, not, exhaustive or anything, but these are, a few things that we want you to be considering as we go through our presentation tonight. All right, here we go. So our learning outcomes for this evening are exploration of self-awareness. So kind of focusing inward and, recognizing what we're feeling both, physically, emotionally, when we're in potentially stressful states. We're going to talk a lot about parental regulation, how to regulate yourself so that you can be in a position where you can help co-regulate with your child or help your child get to a place where they can themselves regulate. Because we understand that the relationship between parent and child is so important. We're going to talk a little bit about blocked care, which can happen, when there is this overwhelming, potential stress, and, your child is having a hard time connecting with you, you're having a hard time connecting with your child, and how to recognize signs of that, and also how to kind of get yourself out of that state. And then last, we will talk about parental resilience, because everybody in this room, everybody here tonight is resilient. And I think we need to celebrate that and talk about, what you can do and what you might already be doing to be more resilient. So I'm going to, pass the mic to Sharon, and let's go.
Thank you, Kylie. I think it's important as we talk about this sort of journey in parental regulation to focus on self-awareness, knowing who we are, and really understanding how our past, which has brought us to where we are today, truly does have an impact on how we parent our children. And how we parent our children is how we respond to them. So think about these questions. How do my past relationships impact me as a person and as a parent? And we're not just talking about partner relationships, we're talking about relationships with your own family, with your parents. Is there anything in your history that might trigger you as you respond to your child? Let me give you an example. I have a very big issue with my child talking back to me. Now, part of me as a born youth worker, I am actually inspired by kids who are questioning. I am inspired by kids who are critical thinkers. I do have what I feel is a bit of a trigger of kids who do it in a disrespectful manner, who have a certain tone in their voice. And I know that that is a direct result of how my mother parented me. That if I were to ever, and I do mean ever, raise my voice or change my tone with Miss Jackie, there would be some repercussions to those actions. And I find that as soon as I hear that, I start to tense up. I start to maybe pant a little bit, and then I'm totally dysregulated. And it may have been a simple sort of questioning of something, but tone and intent, big triggers for me. And so because I am aware of that, it really does help me to either stop it before it starts or find those ways to regulate myself even when I'm feeling a little on edge or stressed. So think about, what are your relational triggers and how do they shape how you parent? And how do my past separations or losses influence my parenting? Self-awareness is one of those things that's what do I want to call it? It is a never-ending journey, right? As we start to mature, finding out who we are, what makes us tick, and more importantly, how comfortable we are in our own skin is something that I think that we will continue to do forever. And so knowing these things really can help us understand how we respond and we react to our children's behavior. So knowing that you don't handle, let's say, a physical encounter well, if your child happens to express their stress in hitting, you would have to figure out a way to manage that situation. If you know that loud confrontations take you back to a certain place, well, then how do you manage the tone of the voice that you use? And that helps you to manage the tone of the voice that your child uses. So this idea of self-awareness is sort of a critical point. And I don't believe we spend enough time sort of figuring out who we are in this parenting game. I always say this, if parenting came with a manual, the first few chapters would be not about your child, but about you. What's your interest in this relationship? What are you getting out of it? What are you giving to it? How is your past impacting it? It would be all about us. And then there might be some stuff about how do you take care of your kid. The problem with that is, you know, that as our children mature, that manual would change consistently. There would be revision after revision after revision. But the one thing that stays constant in this parental relationship is us. And so that we can focus on ourselves. Kylie, next slide, please. So if we are able to figure out what is going on with our past, it can allow us to remain open and engaged when we are interacting with our young person. So here are a few more things to think about. Reflecting on current behaviors in relation to past relationships can help alter your attachment state of mind. What does that mean? So if you are aware that something is your trigger, it will allow you to deal with it in the moment. I'm already there, so let me figure out a way to compensate for it. I guess that's the term that I want to use. So that you can remain engaged with your young person, start to connect with them, and ensure that you remain open and engaged. Notice in the moment your emotional response to your child, and then reflect later with a trusted other. One of the things that I feel, and maybe this goes directly to number 4, having self-compassion. As parents, we are probably our worst critic. And when something has happened, we feel really bad about it. We feel bad of how our child feels. We feel bad about how we feel. It's important that if you have had a moment of dysregulation with your child, that you process that with someone you trust, who will say to you, it's okay. There's a lot of stress going on. You may not have responded in the most appropriate way, but you do have the opportunity to change how you respond the next time. And that you have the opportunity to basically say to your child, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Or I'm sorry that I was so angry at you. It's not you. It's something else that I'm dealing with. But that takes you having a chance to process it yourself. And it is important to find others who speak your language. What does that mean? Those of us who are parenting children not born of us definitely have a different language from those who are doing traditional parenting, meaning parenting their biological children. And sometimes those friends don't understand what we're going through, what we're doing, what we've seen, what we're living through. And sometimes you just need to talk to someone else who totally gets it. And will say to you, yep, been there, done that. How can I help? Around the whole thing. And then if you find yourself becoming dysregulated, taking a break from the situation is important. Taking that breather. And later in our presentation, when we focus a little bit more on self-care, we're going to take a moment and just take some deep breaths. Because I always feel that a couple of good cleansing breaths help to regulate us and allow us to see a situation for what it is and not let our past impact us. Kylie, next slide, please. So this is not really new to anyone, but have you ever really looked at yourself when you might be becoming dysregulated? I always say that when I'm in a moment of dysregulation, it's almost as if I'm having an outer body experience. And I'm over in the corner of the room going, who is that crazy lady yelling over there? And I'm like, it's me. There are some very specific things that happen when we become emotionally dysregulated. If something triggers us, it leads to a release of adrenaline and a production of cortisol. So that's sort of that hot feeling that we get. It might be that rapid breathing that I talked about earlier. It might be a feeling of we are really going to start either fighting or fleeing, and we'll talk a little bit about that on the third bullet, but you can almost feel your body starting to react as you become dysregulated. There's increased oxygen and glucose to the muscles, so you can almost feel them pulsing. That's when you might be clenching your fist, or gritting your teeth. It is a whole physical response when we become dysregulated. Our sympathetic nervous system and midbrain takes over. That's where we have fight, flight, or freeze response. The same thing that we talk about with our children and their response is very much the same response that we have when we become dysregulated. And then ultimately, our brain shuts down. Well, I should say the thinking part of our brain shuts down. That's where all of our executive functions are, reasoning, decision-making. We just lose it. And it is a whole physical experience. And if you note that once you start to regulate yourself, don't you just feel tired? Like your body has gone through an awful lot when it's had this emotional dysregulation. And once you are able to sort of bring yourself down, I don't know about the rest of you, but I need to lay down. Or I need something to just help build myself back up because I've depleted everything in that moment. And it does take a while for that to happen. So be aware of that. Your body starts giving you little hints. Again, it might be the feeling hot. It might be the twitching. As you feel yourself doing that, that's when you have to sort of cut it off before it becomes this explosive moment. Because once you are dysregulated, it will definitely have an impact on your child's regulation as well. And you start doing this ping pong thing, right? He yells, you yell. He yells louder, you yell louder. There's a whole bunch of yelling louder, but no one is hearing anything. And it just makes the situation more difficult than it needs to be. And we know that our children are struggling with the control of regulation. We as the adult need to take the lead and regulate ourselves. If we are regulated, our children will be able to regulate themselves. And they'll be able to see our behavior, and there's sort of a give and take and a mimicking of our regulated behavior that will help our children sort of regulate themselves. Before we go any further into what really happens to our body in this dysregulated state, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions or maybe wanted to share an example of when they became dysregulated. This is not, you have to. I'm just going to open it up for a few seconds. Again, it's hard to see everyone at the same time. So we'll move on. Kylie, if you'll move to the next slide.
All right, so we love to leave you all and give you all tools, especially for our kinesthetic learners and visual learners. This is going to be really helpful for you to be able to visualize all of that really great information that Sharon was just giving about the brain and what happens when we are in that stressed and triggered state. And you can also even look at this from your child's perspective as well. So this was developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel. This is his brain hand model, and we use this quite a lot at the coalition. We think it's an incredibly valuable tool. So we'll talk a little bit about what is the flipped lid. So when you feel threatened or triggered, the limbic system in your brain, so that's going to be the hippocampus, the amygdala, anything that's responsible for emotional regulation, that's your fight, flight, or freeze, is going to be flooded. And everything's going to be kind of, all your neurons are going to be firing, and your brain is just going to feel, as Sharon said, hot. It's going to, in your whole body, you're going to get a rush. And so then that fight, flight, or freeze response is going to be engaged. And again, this is a great thing when you're trying to, escape a dangerous situation. But when you're at home and, your child is dysregulated, or you're in a relatively safe space, but you feel out of control, you want to be able to recognize what's happening and also get those tools to help bring yourself down, to calm your body. So we'll talk, and I'll show you a little bit, but the midbrain is going to kind of blow off the brain's lid. And you'll be able to understand a little bit more when I show you. So I'm going to ask all of you to be a little bit engaged. I know it's hard this evening, but I think being able to do this activity with me is going to be really helpful. So we like to think of our brain, and I hope you can all see my hand. We like to think of your brain as your fist, okay? So your arm here is going to be your spinal cord and your brain stem. So this is just responsible for any kind of bodily functions, like heart rate, breathing, all those important things. But as we look at your hand, we're going to focus on your thumb and your fingers here. So your thumb is the midbrain, or the limbic system, as I mentioned before. So this is your hippocampus, the amygdala, all in here. And this is responsible for your emotional regulation and the fight, flight, freeze response. And specifically your thumb is going to be the amygdala. And these fingers here are going to be your cerebral cortex. So this is responsible for incredibly important things here. This is going to be responsible for thinking, language, reasoning, all of those important things that you lose in the moment when you're feeling that fight, flight, or freeze. So normally we have it where this is our brain, right? These are our cerebral cortex. So this is where we're able to think, speak, and reason. But when we have those moments where we enter that fight, flight, or freeze state, our thumb underneath here is starting to heat up and is starting to become overactive, and you feel that in your body. You feel that, your body starts to shake, and you get a little bit warm, and you start sweating, and all of those really fun feelings, and it'll get way too hot. And what happens is you're going to flip. You're going to flip your lid, right? So all of that, thinking, language, and reasoning is out of here. And all you're focusing on and all you're able to do is just survive, right? So you're going to go into that kind of survival mode. So I appreciate you all doing that with me, but I think that this can be really, really helpful. And we have a couple people on staff that I've thought of, that I think of particularly, that will use that as a tool in those moments when they recognize themselves getting really overwhelmed. Or if you look at your child and you recognize that maybe their lid is flipped, and you do this in those moments to recognize that your child is in that, or you or your child is in that survival mode, as kind of a physical remembering of what's going on. I think it makes us sometimes a little bit more empathetic and sympathetic towards ourselves and to others when we can think about it in that biological sense, and kind of give a name to it. So always remember kind of flipping your lid. That I think will allow you all to better understand what's going on inside your brain when you're in that state. So and as we can understand, which makes a lot of sense, the parent-child relationship, if something triggers your child, it can trigger you, and vice versa, right? So it's really important that you understand your own stress response, and understand that when, you're triggered and you're in that area, you might be going through that flipped lid experience yourself. And vice versa, like if your child's in that state, it can trigger you, but to be on the alert for that. And we'll be kind of going into other skills that can help you regulate and calm yourself down so that you can also be in a better position for yourself and for your child and anyone else in your house. So I'm going to pass it back to Sharon.
Thanks, Kylie. That is an important factor that you said right there at the end. It's you, it's your child, it's everyone in the house, that is sort of impacted if someone becomes dysregulated. And as the primary caretaker, and again, I'm not saying mom, I'm not saying dad, I'm going to say primary caretaker, right? Because it depends on the situation, who's the person in the room. It's important that we remain regulated to ensure the safety of everyone. So some of the keys to staying regulated, as we talked about earlier, identifying your triggers. And this is really being honest with yourself about what those triggers are. Some of us will say, I don't have any triggers. We all do. We absolutely all have triggers. It's just figuring out what those triggers are. I know early in a relationship I was in, I unfortunately used a previous relationship against that person, right? Because I had been so hurt and so wounded and so scarred that as soon as that individual showed any sort of inkling toward that same behavior, and it wasn't even a behavior, it was an action, I flipped. And it took me a long time to admit that it's not that person, it's me. So being able to identify your triggers is very key to regulation and acknowledging them. When sort of moving through the universe with your child, understand why meltdowns and outbursts are actually happening. For those of you who've been to other seminars that the coalition hosts or just has been involved with us, you've heard this before, but I think it's important to say it again. It is not the behavior that we need to be worried about. It is the cause of that behavior. What is the root issue? What is the trauma that is manifesting itself in this particular incident? So it is important to understand why your child is melting down. What are your child's triggers? And sometimes that's where the C in our PACE acronym comes in. Curiosity. Trying to figure out what is causing this to happen is how you find a way to make sure it doesn't happen again. Or at the very least that you are finding ways to help your child and support their sort of behavior journey. But if you do understand what's happening, you can stop it before it starts. I also share with families, it's important at some point to practice a little bit of rational detachment. What do I mean by that? Try not to take your child's behavior personally. This isn't about you per se, although I know it does feel like it, particularly if a child is coming at you. But it isn't about you. So that if you can take that perspective and remember, this isn't about me. Something is triggering my child and it's causing him or her to behave this way. Or they're just having a really hard time in this moment because maybe they're tired. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they've had some incident at school and just feel like they're about to explode. Or maybe they just feel like no one gets them because they're struggling with understanding themselves. Stepping back and realizing it's not you is sometimes very helpful in maintaining a level of regulation. How do I support my child as they go through this? because it isn't about me. It's important when you know that your child has triggers or maybe has explosive behaviors, is to make a plan. What am I going to do? You know, what's the adage? Forewarned is forearmed. If we already know what some of those triggers are, what can you do? Be prepared. Usually this happens when he's hungry. Have a snack at hand. Start them off. Let them start to, sort of regulate themselves, because you know that they just need something to get them to focus. Maybe it's the chewing, maybe it's just pure hunger, but have your plan. Maybe the plan is offering them the opportunity to go outside and just walk around a little bit to see if that will help. You are the adult taking control of the situation. Have your plan ready. And here's the thing that I always say to someone: if plan A doesn't work, make sure you have a plan B in your pocket. Plan C, plan D, all the way to plan Z. And then don't forget double letters. So the idea is just being prepared for how you're going to do that. Part of it might be of the plan, you walking away. I know that if I do not walk away from this situation, I'm going to make it worse. Parent, please walk away. The key to walking away, though, is reminding your child when you plan to return, right? Think about most of our children who have come through care. There has been a lot of abandonment issues. Continues to be abandonment issues, even when they're in a safe environment. So letting your child know, I just need about 10 minutes to go outside and take a deep breath. I'll be back and let's talk again. It's important to have that. If you have a partner in your home, maybe it's switching out if you can. If you feel like nothing that you are doing to regulate yourself is helping, the child has found every button that you have and is not only pushing them, but doing a little dance on them as well. Switching out with a partner is helpful because maybe they can help regulate the child, or maybe they can help regulate you. But it's important to have that. Again, if that is not an option for a partner, is there someone else in the home who can help? A grandparent, an older sibling, someone who has a relationship with your child. And I always said, if you are truly, truly on your own when something happens, one of the best things for most children in regulating, and it also helps for adults, take a walk or hop in the car. Long car rides seem to be a fixer-upper, a fixer-all for most things. So find that. When you're talking about your regulation, finding a way to calm your physiological state. Again, that can be deep breathing, that can be exercising. For you, it can also be having a snack. How do you calm your state? You've got to figure out what that is for you. And then finally, and again, I find that this is the most important thing as a parent, is your self-care. After these moments, you've heard me talk about it, you feel very depleted. What are you going to do to rise yourself back up, to get your energy going? I'd like to say that we all have the luxury of sitting in a warm bubble bath, with candles and all that. That doesn't always happen. But what can you find to take care of you? Is it journaling? Is it going for that walk, as I mentioned? Is it exercising? Is it cooking? I have a few really dear friends. One was on the screen. I'm not sure if she's still with us, who likes to bake. And when they're just feeling stressed, and how do I regulate myself? I'm going to bake a batch of whatever. And part of that, she also involves her children. So it's an opportunity for them to also find calm in baking and using their hands. But more importantly, it's allowing for that relationship to be at the forefront, not the dysregulation to be at the forefront. So finding out what your self-care thing is an important part of self-regulation. So Kylie, if you can, we're going to go into blocked care. That is me, right, Kylie? I'm sorry. I lost my
You're
notes.
right.
Thank you.
Okay.
So one of the things that's definitely a possibility, if we are not able to regulate ourselves when it comes to our behavior or support of our children, is blocked care. Blocked care occurs when a parent is unable to connect with their child, trust their child, be attuned with their child, or feel that they are able to have this mutual influence. The term that we use is intersubjectivity. I won't say all of our children, but a number of our children who come into our homes have what is called blocked trust. They are unable to trust that those around them will care for them, that those around them will protect them, that those around them love them. A child who is going through blocked trust will test their parent on all levels. When that is coming at you over a number of times, it is not unusual for parents to then put up a block in the type of care that they're providing. Now, it can be something as, well, Kylie, go to the next slide, please. This sort of gives you a sense of how blocked care is developed. Blocked trust in children can lead to blocked care in their parents as biological systems for caregiving shut down in the face of defensive behaviors. So our child's defensive behaviors gets us to become dysregulated, and then we are unable to care for our child anymore. So rejection of a parent is rejection of child by parent. And you see that the arrows go both ways. It's sort of this never-ending sort of cycle. As the child pushes the parent further away, the more that they push them away, the harder it is for the parent to stay present. And they tend to then look at the caring of their child as a job. You know, it becomes autopilot parenting. I'm going to ensure you're fed, you're clothed, you have a roof over your head, but there's no connection with the child. That is blocked care. And the more that parents stay in this state of blocked care, the more their child develops their blocked trust. It becomes sort of this really never-ending cycle, and it's not helpful for either of the parties. But the good news is blocked care does have its ability to be, we can recover from blocked care. Kylie, I want you to show, I think it is the next slide. Okay, no, it is not. Go back again, please. Okay, I wanted to talk about the types of blocked care, and it may not be in this slide deck. It may have been forgotten, so I apologize for that. But there are a couple of types of blocked care. There is chronic blocked care, where realistically parents just can't come out of it. Consider it like the deepest form of depression that you can imagine, but it's in relationship to how you interact with your child. Just your mere presence with your child causes you to back away. They enter the room, you leave the room. You know, it becomes a daily thing. And that is hard for a parent. And I'm sure that as parents experience blocked care, and honestly, I've been there too, even though you are trying your best to get out of that situation, the more you dwell on it, the harder it becomes because you're hard on yourself. It's like, how can I not love this child? How can I not respond to this child's emotional needs? What is wrong with me? But again, it is sort of that intersubjectivity, the giving and the taking. So the child is not accepting. The child is pushing away. At some point, we as the parent, because we are human, we start to put up our walls for that. We want to ensure that we don't actually move into the chronic. There is also acute. Acute blocked care is usually situational and stress-based. Might cause us to respond, I can't deal with you anymore. I'm going. You know, our language becomes harsh. We sort of shut down any opportunity for connecting with the child at that moment, but it's based upon a stressful situation. That is your acute. There is also stage-based block care. You can imagine parenting a toddler is very different from parenting an adolescent or a teenager. Or maybe it is not. The tantrums can go either way, right? But that type of block care, we can sometimes experience it based on the level of where our child is. So there's a certain blocked care, and maybe there is no blocked care for a toddler. Maybe there's a sort of acceptance that a 2-year-old behaves this way. But let a 15-year-old behave the same way. We might respond like, you're too old for this. You should know better. Why are you doing that? That starts to become a potential for blocked care because now that teenager is like, oh, that's how you feel. And then they start to push you away. The more they push, the worse you feel. You step back from that child because they're impacting you. So I wanted to talk about the types that are there. We're going to talk a little bit in a moment about how we can recover from that. But this particular slide, and I am going to ask Kylie to move forward now, is a nice opportunity for us to take a little bit of a mental break. Our dear colleague Renee, who is here somewhere on our screens, talked about, you know, when there is heavy information, an opportunity to just look at kittens is a way for our body to sort of de-stress from that moment. And again, this notion of blocked care can be triggering for us because we're like, we would never do that. Oh my God, I've already done that. You know, so an opportunity for us not to feel so hard on ourselves. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to watch some really cute kittens. And in this time, if you want to go take a quick stretch, grab another beverage, and then we'll come back for the second half of our presentation. So Kylie, if you can hit stretch and renew, we're going to watch some cute kittens. No laughing, Chester. Thanks, Kylie, for that. And don't share your screen for a few moments, please. I want to sort of open it up to the group. Well, first of all, I hope you enjoyed our cat compilation. It just gives you a chance to have a quick chuckle and sort of bring down any stress level. And I have to say, cats always make me laugh. My favorite cat video, we almost added it in here, was of a cat slapping a stuffed tiger, because the cat couldn't figure out that it was a stuffed animal. And no matter how bad I feel when I watch that video, I'm in peals of laughter. So I suggest to everyone, again, if you do a quick search on YouTube or Facebook of cat slapping stuffed cat, you will laugh as well. But I wanted to open up the room before we continue with our presentation to see if there's any thoughts, any questions, or any comments to what you've heard so far.
So my issue right now that I'm having is when the kids don't let you, because I am a single mother, and they don't I'm good at recognizing when I need to step away and take 5 minutes, and then I can come back refreshed, and that's fine. My 14-year-old comments about it all the time. He laughs at how quickly I calm myself down. But my 5-year-old right now will not let me walk away. She will follow me, screaming. And I just don't know how to stop and calm myself down and just get out of the situation.
Well, Emily, thank you so much. And I see you have a few people are feeling the same way. That's what I enjoy about these opportunities for us to come together. It's important to know that you are not alone. There are many families who are going through some of these issues yourself. One of the suggestions that we might put out there for you to consider, Emily, because it is very difficult to be on your own as a parent. And finding that space just for you is very difficult. Thinking about ways that if your 5-year-old doesn't want to leave your side, are there some quiet activities that you can engage in together? Whether that's reading a book, whether that is doing some arts and crafts so that you're sitting down quietly doing it to help yourself calm down, but it's also helping her to find those moments of sort of quiet with you. Because usually it is about feeling like there's a lot coming at you at the same time, and that's adding to the stress and not really helpful when there's a little one following right behind you. I once announced I was putting myself on timeout. That's for one of our colleagues. It is absolutely, you can share certain things with them that they understand. But one of the things that the child who's constantly with you is definitely having some attachment issues. And so the idea is, how can you find those moments without making them feel like you don't want to be with them? And at the age of 5, they're not quite understanding, me going into the bathroom quietly does not mean that I don't want to be with you. So really just finding moments where you can be together. It might be going outside. Again, the weather is shifting, but put on a jacket, go for a walk, both of you together. No talking. Let's listen for the birds. Let's watch for something to go by. Giving yourself an opportunity just to take a deep breath. But she's still there with you. And then as she becomes older, I think that she'll be able to understand that idea that I need to walk away for a few minutes and I will come right back. Or I'm going to watch this video with you for a few minutes and then I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then before the video's over, I'm going to come back. The idea of mom goes away, but mom comes back is something that is really helpful for that 5-year-old to understand, or any of the children. They don't have to be 5. Again, I have an almost 16-year-old. I have to still remind her, I'll be back.
It's not all the time with her. She just gets in these manic episodes almost. And I can almost promise you it is related to the stimulants she just started for ADHD, but the doctor won't listen to me and insists that it's out of her system by then and it can't possibly be causing these moments. And it's it's just those moments. Like when she's calm, she could care less whether I'm there or not.
Well, that might also be a nice opportunity for her, that if she's feeling like she needs to get rid of the energy, is find those ways for her. Again, walking, running around the house. And I don't mean inside the house, I do mean outside the house, but running around to find ways to expend that energy. It could be based on the stimulant that she's taking, but how do you get that? How do you get her to find ways to expend it? Is there something that she can do inside the house that is physical, whether it's dancing or, you know, jumping or skipping or something? She needs to figure out a way to get that energy to sort of be directed appropriately. Shanika was talking about, I give my little ones a CD player so they can listen to their own music, and that is my quiet. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the best inventions for parents was the headphones, so that each person can listen to their own individual music, and it sort of puts them in their space. And when they are listening, that allows you to have your time to do your thing. So that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. If they get to choose their own music, they definitely will listen to it and, you know, have that moment of quiet. And really, we're not talking about, at least I don't think we're talking about long periods of time. It's really somewhere between, you know, that 5 and 15 minutes to reset ourselves, to regulate ourselves, so that we can come into this situation with a brand new focus. Because the angrier we become, or the more tired we become, that's when things tend to become completely dysregulated. So helping your child to understand, it goes both ways. You know, you feel better when you have an opportunity, you know, to just sit and think, I need an opportunity too. Or maybe we can go outside and think together. I'm a big outdoor person. Like, my dog gets more walks than I think any dog should have, because that is the way. Let's go, grab a dog, let's go. We're going to walk around. We're going to walk around. And that is the way that we find our calm, you know, when there's a situation within the household. Anyone else? Thought, question, concern? Well, let's move on. Thanks, Kylie. If you can share your screen.
Absolutely. All right, so I mean, we can never say no to those cat videos, and I think that's exactly, you know, if you need those moments, videos like that are fantastic for not only you but also for your kids. So, all right, we're going to talk a little bit about protection from and recovery from blocked care. So I know Sharon talked a lot about what blocked care is, but now we want to give you some concrete, effective strategies that you can use. And again, remember that these, you know, we're giving you, you know, kind of a referral of different things that you can use. They might work in some situations, they might, you know, not be for you, but we want to give you, you know, we want to add things to your toolbox so that you have more skills and, you know, things to lean on in those stressful moments. So mindedness and mindfulness. So this is understanding your, you know, your internal experience in the moment. So this is you, you know, recognizing and acknowledging that, you know, your inner thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, desires, and, you know, specifically focusing on, you know, being kind of in that state of attuned, open, and engaged. Both, you can use this both for your child's experiences, but I think it's also important to recognize that you can be mindful towards yourself. And so if this is something that is a bit difficult for you, there are quite a few apps that you can even, you know, connect to, or you can get into yoga or any kind of mindful, you know, related activity that really just allows you to, one, feel, you know, how you are physiologically, and then also focus on how you are in a particular moment emotionally. I know Sharon has mentioned that she uses an app that will send her particular, you know, kind of pings throughout the day that will have her check in, or be like a check-in for her on how she's doing, which I think is really helpful to create that that schedule so that you're prepared, and when you have those harder days, you're more used to things like that popping up. And those are all available for you to find, and we can even if you're looking for them, we can mention them in the chat as well. So if parents can start kind of mentalizing their own your own thoughts, your feelings, beliefs, worries, fears, desires, etc. This is going to allow you to stay more open and engaged with your child, and then also will help you be more open and available to accept your child's internal experiences. So also their thoughts, feelings, which might differ from yours. So this is kind of, as we're going to go into PACE, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But this allows you to be curious as to kind of what your child is experiencing without trying to change their experience, right? And then what we love to say is that, if you're able to get into that state of mindfulness, this will also help to reduce some of that defensiveness, which I know is kind of a real trigger spot for a lot of people. I myself have some of those moments when I get triggered and immediately I go into defensive mode. And I know that once I'm there, I'm going to say things and potentially do things that are just not going to be what the healthy Kylie is going to want to have done. So if you're able to be in that mindful space and bring yourself down, both you and the parties involved are going to feel a lot better, and you're going to be able to understand and empathize with your child. So I think empathy and compassion for yourself is, it sounds like it's so easy, and yet I think we find it to be so difficult. And I'm gonna, self-disclosure, I'm not a parent. I'm an adoptee, but I understand just from the work that we do that it is so hard for you guys as parents to be empathetic and compassionate towards yourself, because you're kind of, it's ingrained in you to put your child's needs first. And I think absolutely I can understand where you're coming in that, but you need to be able to focus on those moments and recognize that you need to be empathetic and easy on yourself in those moments. We like to say, I forget what percentage we like to call it, but at the coalition we talk about, if you're getting things right, what is it, 52% of the time, you should get a gold star, because as far as parenting goes, there is no rule book. It's different day to day, child to child, moment to moment. So I think there are going to be moments where you hit the nail on the head, and there's going to be other moments where you don't necessarily get it. But I think recognizing and trying to be as compassionate and loving towards yourself is going to be so helpful. I think writing sometimes, the small, even focusing on like the small wins, because I think it's easy to focus on when things go wrong. But I think even writing down, every day or every, week, some of the really, positive things that have gone on and, in that week can be a really helpful touchstone. So I think it's, it's again, easier for us to focus on the negatives, but I would like to also offer that I think we all need to acknowledge when we do things right? All right. And then I'm going to jump into PACE. So I know Sharon mentioned, and I've also mentioned the C in PACE, but PACE is a fantastic tool to use, and this is from Dan Hughes. So if you're interested in looking a little bit more into this particular kind of therapeutic modality, feel free to look into his work. So PACE stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And this can be used not only for you, your kids, but it can be used on your colleagues, on your partner, on your friends. You can PACE everybody. So we'll talk a little bit about each one briefly before I move on to the next thing. But so playfulness is, kind of is the lighter side of discovering your inner experience. So it doesn't need to be deep or serious. Specifically, when you think of playing, we think of it being very light. And again, as an adult, sometimes it's a little bit harder to be playful, but I'd ask you to kind of be curious and try to figure out how to add some playfulness into your day. But so playfulness conveys, a sense of confidence, right? And hope for the future. So, experiences are amplified when you have that relationship with, your child or with your partner or whatever, when there's a little bit of shared playfulness. It's hard to be, to experience shame when you're being playful. It can take a really stressful moment, or an almost stressful moment. And if you're able to, be playful, or even say, run to the, go get your shoes, 3, 2, 1, go, and adding things like that throughout the day, little things that can make situations a lot lighter. Or even you can use it in discipline, I know, which seems a little hard to add playfulness into discipline, but you can, I forget what it is, but certain ways of being like, whoa there, what, want to say that again, or something like, something like that. Little things that you can do to take some lightness in your voice or change the way you might say something or go about a particular situation can ease both yourself and your child when you're in those moments of kind of correcting. Because I know that's easier said than done. But and then so A is acceptance. So this focuses on acceptance of internal experiences. So a bit similar to mindfulness. It's accepting our own inner experiences. And I want to underline this, is that we are not judging. Not judging ourselves, which is really, really difficult. This is how we feel, how we think, and it's neither right nor wrong. It just is. So mindfulness is that's acceptance and mindfulness. I feel a lot in these moments are one and the same. So just try to be in that moment and recognize that, you're going to accept, whatever it is at face value, and that's that, and be accepting that that's the situation. Curiosity, as we've talked about, allows us to know ourselves and our child or whoever more deeply. I recommend, kind of going at this as non-judgmental as possible. We're going to become more empathetic and accepting towards ourselves if we're able to do that. So playing kind of Nancy Drew in those moments and really trying to understand, but again, understand without judgment and without making a plan to correct, but genuinely wanting to know why your child's doing that or why they're experiencing that, really getting to the root of what's going on. So as Sharon mentioned earlier, not focusing so much on the behavior, but what's behind the behavior, what's the kind of the genesis. And last on the list, which is my favorite and maybe pretty easy as well, but empathy, which is kind of the outcome of our curiosity and acceptance, is that compassion. As we get to know ourselves better, we're going to be able to have even more compassion for each other, and especially joining, connection groups that we have here and getting to know other people's experiences, especially those of us who are connected to the adoption constellation, can be really, really helpful. So yeah, and then self-regulation and reflection. So I feel like that goes without saying, but reflecting on your experiences, trying to regulate yourself so that you're able to, co-regulate with your child can be invaluable. And so finding some of those tools, and I'm going to be passing it off to Sharon in a few minutes to talk about self-care, which I feel kind of falls underneath this. But thank you for taking some of these strategies and considering if they might be the right ones for you. And don't be too hard on yourself. Okay. Here you go, Sharon.
Thanks, Kylie. I think I want to focus us a little bit about your last sentence about not being so hard on ourselves. I always say that as parents, we need to give ourselves a little grace. We are not only parenting, we may be working, we may be caring for others. And I don't just mean our children, it might be an elderly parent, our own partner. We may be in an impossible situation at work. We may be fighting a system that is not honoring our child for their greatness. That's a lot of stress at any given moment. And I always say, it feels like every day is the perfect storm where everything is sort of happening at the same time. And when that happens, things happen to us. We shut down as a possibility or response to that. we become angry and maybe we let our own anger impact how we relate to others. We may be sad, we may be detached, and that is okay. Having grace is important. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. There's so much going on. No one is expecting any of us to be perfect. I mean, this is what we tell our children. It's not about being perfect. It's about being you. So the same thing should be given to us, and we should give it to ourselves in the form of that grace, that opportunity for a redo. We made a mistake. Let's try and do it better the next time. You know, we talk about the traditional parenting versus therapeutic parenting. And traditional parenting, again, I am not going to say is good or bad. It was. But I look at the parents and sometimes say, you were doing the best that you could with what you had. You made some mistakes. Not going to deny that. But it isn't good or bad. It's as Kylie said, it just is. Give yourself that grace. You are still learning what it means to be a parent. And I don't say that in a condescending way. We are all are, whether you've birthed children or you're raising children. And you continue to learn what it means to be a parent. Because again, you parent a toddler very differently than you parent a teenager. And I remember, oh God, because I am an old lady. I must have been in my 30s. And my mother said to me, you think I sleep just because you're older and you're married and you live out my house? That is not true. I still worry about you because you're my child. You continue to parent regardless of how old that child is. So give yourself this opportunity to learn along the way on how you're parenting that individual in front of you. And the other thing that you need to remember is that individual in front of you is probably more than one person. It's the child chronologically. So maybe you're parenting an 8-year-old, but maybe you're also parenting a 2-year-old because that was the last time that this child remembers someone caring for them. Maybe this is when the trauma began. And then maybe you are parenting the person you hope that they will become. So that is complicated. Please give yourself some grace. And the way that we find those moments of grace, and I'm going to even say moments of peace, is through self-care. Quiet moments where we can reflect. Yeah, maybe I didn't handle that right. Maybe next time I can do this. Or maybe it really is the moment where you pat yourself on the back. Could you say, man, I actually nailed that? Because 2 months ago, that may not have been my response, but I nailed it. Giving yourself that opportunity to do that. This particular sort of slide that we're going to show you next is from the Calm app. I know that I put in the chat 3 of what I consider my favorite. And although I am not endorsed by these 3 apps, I may have to start because I talk about them all the time and they're so helpful in helping me to find those moments of calm and peace and reminder to be mindful. So Calm is one of them. Calm is a simple app that's on your phone. It is free, or you can subscribe to it, your choice. I say go for the free version. It's really good. You can set up on your phone moments for you to be reminded to be mindful. I tend to have a reminder hit at 9:30, a little bit after my day begins, one around 1:30 when you're in the midst of your day and things could be crazy. I have one coming to me as soon as my kids come home. Be present. Kids are coming home. And then I usually have one that I have for before I go to bed, just to sort of calm myself down. Wonderful, wonderful way with a tool that is always near you, because I can guarantee you right next to you right now is your phone. So being able to use that for peace, to find those moments of mindfulness is very helpful. I also use Mindful. It is another one very similar. And then there is an app called Daily Motivation. Daily Motivation also can send you reminders just to be good to yourself. If we are good to ourselves, then we are good to others. So those are those moments. So parental resilience. How do we continue to stay strong when everything is coming to us? Take space to regulate yourself, not allow yourself to take your child's behavior personally. We talked about that before. Stay in the moment, stay mindful. It's not about you. Keep supportive people close to you. Find your people. I cannot stress that enough. When I am taking it personally, I think that is all of ours. You know, Kelly mentions in the chat that that's her downfall. Listen, we are human. We are human. No one likes, an 8-year-old cursing you out. Who does? Right? You take that personally. The child has hit you. You take that personally. The child has walked away. You take that personally. I know that it is probably the hardest thing for us to do, but it is trying to remind ourselves in the moment and after the moment. It isn't about us. There is something that is triggering our child. Let's try to figure out what that trigger is and help them to work through that. One of the things that we stress is it's not behavior management. We're not necessarily going to be able to change our children's behavior, although we'd love to try. But can we support them as they are trying to figure out how to handle all of these things that are coming at them, or deal with a past that has been so stressful for them that it's hard for them to come out of it? So that's what I mean by not taking it personally. Of course, it hurts. It really does hurt. I joke with my children sometimes. I was like, I know that you think that mom is superwoman, but I get my feelings hurt too. And so I wonder if you care about me. But they're not doing it to us. That's the difference, right? That's what I mean, not taking it personally. It's not to us. They don't know how to maybe articulate. They don't know how to navigate. And so we are there to help them. But again, if we do take it personally, finding those moments to be alone where we can say, listen, I know it's not me. I know it's not me. I know it's not me. And that's why I say finding those supportive people so they can help remind you, it's not you. It's not you. It is the situation. I had a mentor many, many years ago, because I've worked with youth for a number of years. He would always say to me, there is no such thing as a bad child. There is a child placed in a bad situation. So it is our responsibility to figure out what situation is our kid going through right now that's causing this behavior. It's not us. So letting that go, I know is difficult, but I'm going to ask you to try so that you don't feel so overwhelmed as a parent. The more that we take this in, the more that we feel it is about us, the easier it is for us to slip into those moments of blocked care. And that's what our children don't need. As much as they push us there, they're testing us to see, do we really, really care for them? Do we really, really understand them? Are we really going to be there for them? So we need to find ways to let it go. So finding those supportive people is very important. And then finding ways to soothe yourself. you know, whether that is, as I mentioned, taking that walk, or maybe it's grabbing a snack, or maybe it's watching a movie, or maybe it's listening to music, or maybe it's going somewhere where no one else can hear you and letting out a really big scream. I've done that. I'm sure my neighbors think I'm crazy because I'm thinking I'm alone, but I'm like, oh my God, there's somebody on the other side of that of that wall who has probably just heard me scream. But just finding a way to let it out will be helpful for you to build your resilience. I always say to parents, imagine yourself as a battery. What does that battery look like fully charged? It is ready to go. It can power anything. As that battery starts to deplete, as it lowers itself, as it loses its power, it becomes less effective. And then at some point, it's done. And once a battery is done, it takes a lot to get it to come back. So think of yourself as that battery. Find those things that keep that energy up, keep you ready to engage, keeps you ready to build that and strengthen the relationship you have with your child. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to end our sort of presentation with just this moment of breathing. And when you take a breath, a cleansing breath is a breath that comes through your nose and is exhaled out your mouth. So you're going to follow this breathe bubble. Breathe in and breathe out. Thank you, Kylie, for sharing that. No more than 15 seconds, but giving you an opportunity to just take a deep breath and to push it out. Cleansing breaths. This is what the app will do as well. It will also send you through guided meditations where you have 3 minutes. Just sit with your eyes closed, listen to the words, and let the power of those words wash over you and give you sort of the strength to move on to the next thing. Kylie, I'm going to ask you to unshare your screen because we're just going to go into a period of questions and answers.
Okay.
Thank you. So that concludes sort of the formal presentation of parental regulation. We would now like to open up for if anyone would like to share or if there's any questions or commenting. So we have a conversation going into the chat about expanding balls are great ways to do cleansing breaths with kids. So I'm assuming it's something, Alyssa, that expands and contracts. Is it automatically, or is it something that you have to do manually? And Alyssa, you can put it into the chat if it's easier.
It is manual. Yeah,
Okay.
you just expand it. I'll try and find a link with a picture.
Ooh, perfect. Thank you for sharing. We're always looking for new resources that will help us support our children.
And Sharon, I think I saw a hand from Serena. Hey, Serena, how are you?
Hi.
Hi, Serena. How are you?
Exhausted.
And welcome to parenting.
Well, today we adopted our 8-year-old today. Yay! After 6 years. But my 14-year-old is home, and he did well last weekend because he's going to that residential school, but I cannot get him to do his laundry. Every time like the subject comes up, he starts to shut down. You could see him getting like agitated. So I actually had an SPR meeting with the school today, and they said basically he does the same thing, and he goes back into like describing his trauma, and he's using like excuses, and so I just actually, while you were on, I missed part of this because I went for a ride so that I didn't kind of like lose my what.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can totally appreciate that. And I'm so happy for you, Serena. One, for the welcoming of permanency for Miss I think that that is wonderful.
Thank you.
But you also, I mean, here's the thing when it comes to traumatic experiences, right? And not really knowing some of the things that our kiddos may have gone through. Maybe there is something about the smell of the cleansing product that does trigger him. I mean, again, when you're talking about a teenager, you're walking this fine line, right? Is it teenage behavior, or is it something related to what they've experienced in their past?
Well, when he first got here and I taught him, he was like, I remember him, he used to still talk to his mom then, him like being proud that he was learning how to do laundry, but he has always had difficulty folding. But even when you offer to help him now, it's like his room and it smells awful. Like, so I was hoping, like, I got into this last weekend, like trying to nicely tell him, like, he's 14 going on 15. He's, handsome, right? And the girls are, hey, and he's like, hey. And I'm like, yeah, girls don't like stinky boys. So, you need to change your shoes, because he always has at least 2-3 pairs of sneakers so he could switch them off because they stink. And, trying to teach him about, hygiene. Like, he's great about brushing his teeth usually, but the clothes is like, and the room is, ugh.
That is it. Again, not unusual for young people who are struggling with organization and executive function, and the ability to get that room looking that way is very easy. The sort of sloppiness, the not putting things back, the not just making a mess, right?
Right, because I have it like immaculate, and it only takes him like a half a day home. I'm like, oh my God, it looks like a tornado hit it. Like, his clothes, he just drops them where I don't even know how it happens.
The idea of then trying to get it back into the organization because it's your organization is sometimes difficult for them, trying to find ways for them, like, why don't you just pick up your socks today? Like, one thing, right? Because somehow in their world, that room has become unbearable. Now, again,
Well, I
they've
try not
caused
to
it.
let it get that way because it used to be that way. But the problem is that he will blatantly tell me he refuses to do it. So like, like, I heard what you were saying earlier, like, as a, like, kids talking back, right? And so that's where I do too. Because my dad, I tell my kids, my teeth would have been on the floor. He will blatantly like say, I'm not doing that. And I think, what? And then I don't know how to react to that. Like, how do you have a good way to respond to that? Because I know what I really want to say in my head can't come out my mouth. And a lot of times I simply have to turn around and walk away, but that's not solving the issue.
It isn't. And you have to decide, Serena, what is the battle you'd like to fight, right? You have to decide what it is. And I share this with you with personal experience because I too have a 15-year-old who lives in her own filth, right? I'm going to be honest with you. And so what I have decided is, one, I'm not cleaning your room anymore for you, right? I think you're old enough to manage that. Two, if you are choosing to live this way, I'm going to leave you there, because we've talked about strategies for cleaning. We've talked about just what I was saying to you, one thing at a time. But she really does not, it becomes so overwhelming to her that she will fight against it.
Right.
Again, you've caused it, you're living in it, but until she can accept help or accept direction toward cleaning it, it's not going to happen. So I have, for better or for worse, because yeah, smells like something has died in there. And
Thank
then
you,
our
Carmela.
dog has used it as an indoor potty, right? Because she thinks, well, it stinks, I'm going to go make it stink some more. But it's choosing the battle, because it was going to be an issue that was going to raise a lot of explosive behavior. There are other things that I can worry about. Again, this becomes your personal choice of choosing what the battle is.
I try really hard to do that, but when you could smell his room from the hallway, it's kind of difficult, and there's not very much left in there because we've went in there, and basically what happened was I give my kids like a time limit, and if you don't get things done within the time limit, and I mean, I'm really like lenient. Sometimes it's like, you got till next week, you've got till next month. And if it's still on the floor, that tells me you don't care about it. I throw it out or donate it. So he's looking for his DJ board right now. And honestly, my memory's so bad, I don't think I would have thrown that out. But I was like, I don't know, like I haven't seen it for months, and you're just asking me now. So he said he tore his room up, which his room was like a 10-minute cleanup before. So I don't even want to go upstairs. But I also, he's just home for the weekend. I don't want to have an episode, although I am learning that he can go back to school early if he has an episode, but I would prefer for him to be home because it's like supposed to be a celebratory weekend with her adoption and, her birthday. And I set up for him to see his best friend, but I went for the ride, but I'm still feeling a little antsy.
Yeah.
But I'll let you can keep going, because I don't think there's like a straight answer for my issue.
Sharon, something
Yes.
that I've gotten from doctors and people that we've worked with is trying to help them, like the concept is time stands still. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but the idea is that, okay, that's fine. You don't have to do that right now, because you're saying, Serena, he's like just refusing to do it. To say, okay, so time stands still until you do this, till you get this done, and make it something reasonable, something small, like Sharon was saying, start with one thing that nothing else is going to happen. Like, you're not going to be able to go do this. You're not going to be able to go play, your Xbox. You're not going to be able. So time stands still until you do this one thing. And I'm going to remain calm, but it's really on you to decide when you're going to want to move on to the next step of something to do with your life. And so here it is. So that might be another strategy to give out a
I
try.
kind of tried that. So like I didn't approach the whole room thing. I learned my lesson. This is, he's been with us almost 5 years, but I approached just the laundry thing, not the whole room thing. And knowing that his best friend is supposed to come over tomorrow night, when the aunt comes to babysit for, my younger one, she'll bring her nephew, who's his best friend. And so I said, like, I need you to have this done before he comes over tomorrow. And he went into he goes into either shutdown mode or explosive mode. So right now he's a little bit in shutdown mode. I'm kind of wondering if looking for the DJ board, he said he had to tear his room up, which there's not a lot left in there, was him kind of having a mini explosive thing without exploding on us, which, I'm grateful for that. And I will have a conversation, reinforcing the positive part about that. But he is super frustrating.
It's, again, I think the harder thing for us to appreciate and understand, it's already done, right? The room is already the hot flaming mess. Like, we can't take
it
that
actually
back.
hasn't been that bad because he's not home during the week, but
when he's
right
home,
now it's just the laundry. I'm like, it's one thing. I didn't even tell you clean the whole room. It shouldn't be like that crazy.
It shouldn't be, but remember that he is seeing and hearing it differently from us. Like,
Okay.
from us, we're saying it's just the laundry, right? But that's there's something more to it. Maybe it is overwhelming. Maybe doing his laundry is too much. Again, start small. Just wash your socks. Just wash your underwear. Just wash this. Or between 6 and 8, just do this. Doing it in a sort of broken up step-by-step process might get him to process it easier. Because
Okay.
you're saying just do your laundry, and he's looking at it like, and mind you, he may only have one small bag of laundry. But
Yeah, it's
he
only
may
a
see
basket.
it-
I know what it is. I was here when he washed it last weekend, but it's still sitting in a basket.
Right, but he may see it as this overwhelming task. It's trying to break it down in a way that makes it easier for him to process. Rob, thank you for sharing that time
Yes, thank you.
freezes. I think that is a very helpful technique,
Yep.
to let children know the ball is in your court, right? You have control in this, which is what most of our children are looking for, right?
Right.
That they are controlling the situation. Well, I am now giving you all the control. If you
Right.
want to do this to get that, then this will happen. But think about it in smaller, digestible pieces, as opposed to clean your room, which again, for us, that's easy. Go clean your room. But what does that mean? Go clean
Right.
your room. So breaking it down might help to
Oh no, I learned that a
slow
long
down.
time ago too. Like his list had to be very specific, like pick up your socks off the bathroom floor kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you can't say clean the bathroom or pick up your stuff. You have to be, he's known for, he leaves a trail of socks for some reason in my house, but so that's kind of like the thing, but
That might just be a boy thing. We suffer from that over here too, with the trail of socks. I'm like, I can always tell what sport is being played by the sock that is left on the road. Yeah, it is not easy. And once you find what works, you have to be prepared for the next time it won't work. And
Right.
what will you do again? Again, what's plan B for the whole situation?
And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, whose problem is it? Is that really my problem or is that his problem? And sometimes the best teachers are friends who tell him how stink he is.
right,
Oh, if it's going to be your problem, then he has no interest in dealing with it.
right,
I know my wife taught me how to do my laundry when she finally said, look, I don't care how you fold. Don't fold my stuff. Fold
Right.
your stuff any way you like. And that was the trick. I got
Okay.
into it. Doing the laundry is great, as long as I don't have to fold it. Because when I folded it, invariably I folded it wrong. So many times we tell our children to do the laundry, and we want them to do the laundry like we do the laundry. And that's half the battle. You just have to
Right.
you have to figure out, whose problem is it? If it's not my problem, I'm not taking it on.
Listen,
that's
I
the
told him
beauty
honestly,
about
I'd be
having
happy if he just put like socks were in the drawer, socks belong in, and pants
That's
in
too
it.
much.
But his
Why
stuff
do
is
you
like
care where
all
his
mixed
socks
up. And
go?
then he's like, I can't find any clothes. I'm like, wonder
That's
why you
beautiful.
balled them up and threw them all in the same drawer.
That's right. That's a lesson every morning. That's not your problem. That's his problem.
Just trying to prepare him for life.
Alyssa,
That is true.
Prepare him for life. But if we protect him from life, he doesn't get prepared.
There's always a little
Alyssa,
bit.
sorry, Sharon. I just wanted to mention that Alyssa popped a couple things in the chat that I just wanted to point everybody to, as far as some potential things that you can do as a way of helping your child build, that autonomy. So saying, what is one thing you'd most appreciate me doing at the same time while you're doing, what's one thing that you want to do? So like in that situation of doing laundry, like what's the thing that's most helpful for me to do? At least this is the way I'm interpreting it. Elisa, please let me know if I'm interpreting it wrong. But and also said, having them choose the amount of time, so 15, 10, 20 minutes, and letting them set a timer. And then you can either both do the you can do the partnering of the productivity for that amount, so it doesn't feel as daunting. And you can also partner in doing one load for each load he does, or he could get them in the wash and you could fold, or vice versa. So I feel like these are also maybe some tools. Again, not sure, Serena, if this is anything you've tried, but I feel like we can all maybe benefit from a little bit of these things. So thank you, Alyssa, for sharing that.
And I know that I saw Sharniqua, did you have your hand up at one point? We want to make sure that we honor if someone has their hand up. And then my screen keeps shifting. Why does it do that? I think Carmela, did you have your hand up? If you had a question, either of you, please unmic yourself and let us know. It is also possible that I may be seeing things. So don't, if those two individuals didn't have anything, is there anything else from anyone else that they'd like to share or ask a question? Well, I know that the evening wears on. Some of you might have to go and take care of kiddos, or hopefully taking care of yourself. There's a hand up, Kylie.
Yes, I think Jill Cummings has a hand.
Okay,
ahead,
Jill,
Jill.
unmic yourself. I can't see your screen. Thank you, Kylie, for seeing that. And then I see Michelle has her hand up. So Michelle, you're next. Go ahead, Jill.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can now see you.
Okay. I was going to say, it's not something specific. I guess it's more of a share. I have 5 adopted kiddos, and 3 of them, for the most part, do a really nice job. My 16-year-old does a really great job. My 7 and 8, they have ADHD, but other than that, they do a pretty good job. But my middle 2, hold on, incoming. Good night. Love you. Bye. Shut the door. Okay. Sorry. Bedtime. Good night. Love you.
Good night. Yay, we see you. Bye-bye.
Poor sale come in. Anyway, my 8-year-old, she had to get that in. Oh no, hold on. Now there's a husband. I was just gonna ask a question. Thank you. Sorry, this is crazy hour. Everybody's trying to get to bed. Anyway, what I was gonna say is I really struggle with my 2 middle children. So my 16, 8, and 7 do very well. My 15 and 13-year-olds. Good night. I'm in the middle of asking a question. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Geez, they all come in at the same time.
Nope, this is part of life. We are so used to it. Do not worry.
Do you not see the screen and all these people? Like, I'm not watching a show. Anyway, my 13-year-old, I am very lucky. He is currently in residential. We typically have him home like every weekend. And I say that because him being there is huge. Because he needed to be watched 24/7, and I've had him since he was 2 and he's now 13. But and he's doing okay. In fact, we just got a phone call from his school saying he had I guess he bolted from the program tonight, which is not uncommon. But my 15-year-old still lives at home. And in addition to ADHD, she has reactive attachment. And in addition to that, she has cognitive delays. And I have to say, I don't know how to explain it except for that to live with her is miserable. I'm being honest. I'm just being really candid and honest. Living with her is hell. And it's not that I don't love her. I definitely, absolutely love her. I've had her since she was 3. And the thing is between the negative attention seeking, which is getting worse with age, and it was pretty bad before, between that, the cognitive delays where she doesn't literally understand a lot of things, it's really hard to teach lessons, get to the truth. Like all of that is, my husband says it's like arguing with a belligerent drunk. And I know that probably sounds terrible, but it's accurate. And he's a paramedic, so occasionally he does have to deal with those belligerent drunks. But you're trying to reason with someone who cannot reason. And like I do as much as I can, and I've gotten so much better because it's been 11 years now. I've gotten much better at self-care because I'm 52 and I'm like, I could die next year. Like anything could happen, right? COVID could happen. I could have a heart attack. I could have a stroke. I'm getting older. So I've gotten better about that, but it doesn't matter if I'm out for 2 or 3 hours. I still come home to the same in my face person. She's, like I said, I've never met anybody attention seeking like her. I'm her outlet. She's a plug. She's a lamp, whatever you want. She needs to be with me 24/7. And I have to say that as things have gone on, I'll wrap this up because there's so many things I could say. I have a hard time being around her because I'm her person. And she's not truthful. She lies and she's sneaky and all of those things that can kind of go along with children who have reactive attachment disorder. It's infuriating. So I find myself going off the wall, and I don't mean to be that way, but I there's not enough time. I think even if I was away from her for a month, the minute I come back, I get sucked into that vortex of her world again. So there's never, like, I feel like I never build up my resistance. Does that make sense? So I feel like I'm in blocked care. I'm stuck with when she says things, when she's sitting there swearing at me behind her mask in the middle of the outlets, and she's like, I just told the security guard that you abandoned me. I'm like, I haven't moved a muscle. What are you talking about? She's infuriating. I just don't know how else to say it, except, again, I love her, but she's infuriating. And I don't know how to calm myself down because I get sucked in. And before you know it, I'm saying things that was not who I ever was before she entered my life. Before her and her brother entered my life, I was a fairly normal, I think, human being. And since they've entered my life, and it's been 11 years, I'm a crazy lady. Like, so I just don't know how, like, I could breathe in and breathe out, but the point is I'd be always breathing and never getting anything done because of her being around me. And like I said, I find that I'm turning into, I don't want to say I'm a cruel person, but I'm starting to be like unkind when I'm with her. I don't know if that happens to anybody else, but and then I hate it. And then how do you love someone and can't stand them at the same time, right? Like, I love her to pieces, but I half the time want to run across the room and attack her, like just like football. I've never done that. I've never put a hand on her, just so you know, but so I don't know about anybody else, but she's infuriating. And I have to say, I know when I look at my kids compared to other kids, I'm lucky. I've never actually had any of my children tell me they hate me. Anybody ever tell me that I'm not their real mother? Like, I've never had any of that. They've never laid a hand on me. I have several friends that have been beaten up by their children. So I know I'm lucky, but the mouth. And now she's a teenager, right? And hormones and all of that stuff. I'm like, oh, mental illness and being a teenager is not a good look. So that's a lot of stuff.
You've said a lot, but it all comes to one thing. It is exhausting. I'm going to validate that for you. Okay. It is exhausting. Everything that you are feeling is true. It really, really, really is. And the idea of mental health issues is that it is a lifetime thing, right? It's not necessarily going to go away, and there is the potential for it to become worse. There's also hope that it can, be more manageable, but it can go in the other way as well. So everything that you are feeling is so real. And yes, we understand that part. So how do you find those moments to sort of catch your breath? Because it feels like it's a barrage, right? You can almost figure like a tennis ball thing, just throwing tennis balls at you all the time. It draining, exactly is some of the words that are used. It's finding those moments of respite, whether there's some way that she can be engaged in some other activity with some other people. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about residential care. That is potentially options down the road. But what is it that she likes to do? Who does she like to circle with? Can we find moments of those respite where you can have, 2 hours here, 3 hours here on a consistent basis so that you can recharge, right? Is there an opportunity, the mouthy teenager, can you do something to even flip it and make it playful, right? It's like, you know what? We might be able to make that a little bit easier if you tried it a different way, right? So getting them to sort of think about, you know what, maybe I don't have to say it that way. Maybe I can say it another way. And I might get the response that I want in a more positive manner as opposed to a negative manner. Is there someone else? I know that you're her person. And part of being her person is that she knows that you do love her, right? And that you are accepting of her. You are her mom, right? But is there someone else that is in her sphere, right, that can also help to be the person that you tag out with, whether it's another caring adult that she's attached to, an older friend or something that she can attach to, that you can switch out so that you do have that moment of, what's the word I'm looking for? That moment of peace. But it is going to be this lifelong thing. How do you find those ways?
I have a question. Has she maybe tried the health, I think it's called Health Homes program, where they come like once a week or every other week, and they spend time with the kids either at your home or they take them out for a couple of hours to give you some respite?
I've
We
never heard
have,
of that, but
yeah,
I'm in
both of-
Massachusetts, so that might be, being in Massachusetts, it might be a totally different thing.
Okay.
We do not have respite care in Massachusetts. I have been fighting for respite care, with our, Department of Children and Families, that sort of thing, because they don't care. Once they're adopted, they're off their list, so they're not worried about that. But that's something that I've been working on with different agencies. Like, we need to provide respite, especially during COVID. Like, they're not the only ones that are going to hell in a handbasket. So aren't the parents that are trapped inside the house with these kids. Because I'm like, if we go on lockdown, I'm switching families. Who's with me? Everybody's like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'll stick with
Right.
my
So
own.
I mean, I am in New York, so we do have a program called Health Homes, and like, I didn't know about it. I found out about it probably through DSS or one of the therapists, which sometimes that's what happens, right? You have to network because you don't get all of the information off the bat necessarily, depending on where you are from. In my case, the county that I'm in, they're very helpful. And so this is not necessarily really considered respite care, because they also help them sometimes with like things that you want to work on, like communication and going out into the community and working on, those skills, right? I don't, obviously you're in another state, but I would try to reach out to somebody and see, a therapist or, some local agency, and maybe, I don't know, where Agape, if you guys know somebody like in Massachusetts that could maybe help her get information on something like that if they have it.
Well, our reach is really New York State, but it doesn't. I always think a good Google search is also really helpful. To figure out what's within your area or nearby, or is there just an organization that has the opportunity to sort of support you. And I use the term respite. I mean, I'm just giving you the opportunity for some breathing room. One place that we use also in New York State is, and I want to say they're national, so maybe it's available to you as well, is care.com, another place that I should get paid for endorsing them. But but the thing is that they provide caregivers for a variety of things, whether it's senior parents, for pets, for children. And they are vetted and they're background checked, and you can be very specific on what you're looking for. Someone who might have a clinical background who could work with you. I mean, you can go through that as an opportunity. The problem is they are paid, right? It isn't a service. You are paying for them to come in, but that might be something that if you connect with someone can come in on a regular basis, so that that, every Wednesday from 4 to 7, it's my time. Just so that you have something to look forward to, and know that you have this moment of, I can rebuild myself during this time. I wish there were a silver bullet to this. There really is not. It is a practice of trying to figure out how to best have your child manage or supporting their behavior, and then finding those additional supports to sort of bolster you, as a parent. That is one of the things that we try to do in Agape. I wish I could say easily, Jill, here's where you go to in Massachusetts. I don't have that readily.
I am actually, believe it or not, I'm a trauma coach in the state of Massachusetts with the MSPCC. So I think that's probably why I know sometimes when I say things, I'm like, oh no, you're a trauma coach. You know better than that. Don't be but it just gets the better of me. That's what irritates me. I'd rather be ignorant to the whole thing, but I know that what I'm saying is not helpful. I'm making things worse, which I would never recommend to other people. But because I'm a coach, I can share actually my examples with them. But no, I have torn through every single place in Massachusetts to try to find someone. I'm very lucky in the sense that I am married and I can totally hand off. He does work 24-hour shifts, so those can be very difficult depending. But for the most part, I do absolutely get a break. I can get a break. I don't get respite necessarily, but I can get a break. It's just that she is just so all-encompassing. It just doesn't seem to matter sometimes. And I just wish that I could, maybe duct tape would work. I don't know. I just wish I could shut my mouth sometimes and not be so mean. Like,
it's reactive. It's not
it is very
necessarily
reactive.
It's reactive. It is triggered. You think about yourself again, if you were standing there and being hit with a barrage of tennis balls, at some point you're going to lose your cool, right? You're going to try to break the machine. You're going to try to get it to stop. The idea is, that is something that is going to happen. What can you do to sort of divert this, right? If it is walking away, if it's making light of the situation right there to sort of stop the energy, is it, you have to figure out what is it that you need to do to sort of don't let yourself get there, because she already realizes what's going to push your buttons, right?
Oh God.
So
yeah,
that's not, you can't stop it. She knows the secrets. So now your job is then to flip it and be like, keep pushing, but I'm not going to fall for it anymore. And that again may simply be, you know what? Till we can have this conversation, I'm just going to walk away for a little bit. I'll be back in about 10 minutes. And see if that sort of cuts off, because your reaction is fueling her delivery.
Oh,
I'm going to push you. Mom explodes. Okay. So now I'm going to go in deeper. And then mom gets more explosive, I'm gonna go in deeper. So it just becomes, so figuring out how to prevent yourself from getting there is really the key to a lot of this, and finding those moments of, here she comes, I know what she's going to do, I'm not going to fall this time, I'm ready, might be helpful. But Jill, if you don't mind, if you drop your email into the chat, we're going to capture that and see if there's anything else we can send to you, just as tools or tips to sort of help you. I feel you. I do feel you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Michelle, you've been waiting patiently for a long time. How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I tell you, I'm going through extreme anxiety right now because I do so much work with the kids, I feel like, and then you send them to school, and this year's been rough with just all the behavior issues that are happening across the board. I feel like because kids have been locked up for 2 years almost, so to speak, and my little guy, he's in first grade, and they put him in the co-taught room, and there's a lot of big behaviors, and they got the behavior charts. If somebody misbehaves, they're going up to the front of the room and changing their color card. And I feel lucky so far that he's not one of the behavioral problems so far. But then they tell me they tell me about him shutting down, and he's not able to perform, like he's not able to learn, and I just give you an example. I went in for the teacher conference, and the teacher's like, he can't count to 20. And I said, well, yeah, he can count to 100, and I videotaped him counting to 100 later and sent it. But like he's not, I feel like he's not able to think in that class because he's in this like fear state. I don't know if that's what it is, but he it got so it's gotten so bad, and he's told me, I don't feel safe in my classroom. And he goes out for like intervention services for math and reading, and he's making great progress there. But the classroom teacher, doesn't see it, and it's becoming a real issue, and it's gotten so, like, he is so terrified of kids getting in trouble. Like, he has the names of the kids who are always on like the bad list of the behavior charts, and he's associated with them being bad kids. Just like if he is bad on behavior, he associates with it him being bad. And I found out that he told me that, there was kids peeing in the bathroom, like all over, like the walls, the floor, the toilets. And he takes it upon himself to clean it up to keep, the teacher from finding out, and this kid that does it getting in trouble. And I'm like, I don't know. So it's like when you see your kid, in that kind of position, I mean, I don't even know what to do, and yeah, I don't even know how to help him through it, because I feel like you can't tell the teacher, she can't do those behavior charts. You know, she's got to check with him. He doesn't feel safe, and it just kind of falls on deaf ears.
And that stress that your child is feeling is definitely stressing you. You know, you started the conversation
Yeah.
talking about the anxiety, and I understand that, and that just leads to other things. And so here's the thing, you surely can talk to the teacher. You know,
Mhm.
I think that is something that as parents, we have every right to talk to the teacher about what works for our child, right? You know, you're not speaking for the class, you're speaking for your child and what works and what doesn't work. So I think that you should talk to them if it's causing, again, the anxiety is going both ways. He's anxious, causing your anxiety. It's not healthy for your family, right?
No.
Overall.
Yeah.
So it is definitely something that you should be very confident in sort of sharing with the teacher to see if there's ways that, you know, these things can be addressed. And maybe is it a switching in classroom? You know, Jill and Rob are both talking about, you know, talking to the teachers or talking to your CSE department around making accommodations through a 504 plan or things around that. You do have a voice to support your child. And again, if the support is what you need, that is something that Agape can sort of help you navigate some of that. And there really is no issue that is too small. The idea is if the child is not, I don't want to say thriving, that's not the word I'm looking, it's not in that class.
Yeah.
Should not be in that class.
He'll say, I learn in these other places, not in my classroom.
So he's
So
even
I
able
feel
to
like he
articulate
knows.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. That is very powerful, right? That he can let you know clearly, you know, where these things are. I think that this is a discussion that you have with the teacher. I think it is something that you share, you know, across the board. Because we're in December, right? School has been going on now for 4 months. There's no reason why your son should feel anxious for the remainder of the school year. What are some of the things that we can put into place to sort of help support that, which again, will come to how can it best support you? Again, this is becoming, it's a cycle. You know, again, our focus is on the parent this evening, but our stress over our children is what's causing, right, a lot of these issues. So Michelle, you know that you were always welcome.
I had a parent teacher conference last Friday, and we're continuing it tomorrow. And I have not slept all week. I'm like, I need to do something to get sleep tonight, because
when we are tired, that is when bad things happen, right? And I don't mean bad necessarily in that, but you just can't think straight when you're tired. So yes, please do. Please find a way to try and put your head down. I know there's a lot of stress. I can hear it. I can almost feel it through the screen, but you've got to, you've got to sort of put yourself back, you know, to a place of whole so that you can go into that meeting and be ready to sort of hear, but also deliver the best for your child. And again, reach out, Michelle, you know who you have to reach out to here, you know, in your county, and just let them know that's what we're here for. We'll be there to support you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'm looking at my time. I'm not rushing anyone. If we want to continue the conversation for a few more minutes, we definitely can. I think this is helpful for you to hear from one another. Michael, I see your hand is up. If you'd like to ask, and we'll take one more, and then we'll see if we can wrap this up for the evening and let you all get your sleep, Michelle.
You know, actually, it was just more of an input than anything else. For Jill, as I was listening to her and the issues that she's having, I've had the same issues with my 15-year-old nephew, and I've tried different things to try and diffuse situations. 2 or 3 times now, I tried something just completely off the wall. And I found it really helped. It seems like a couple or 3 times now when things have gotten very stressful between him and I, we have disagreements on something. I wanted to do something, he doesn't want to, we end up arguing, any kind of a situation like that. 2 or 3 times now, I've just out of the blue, I'd say, you know what, I'm hungry. Want to go get something to eat somewhere? I don't feel like fighting today. And you know something? I never realized it, but for several days, that made a big difference in both of us. It seemed to open him up more as far as, do you have things you want to tell me that you're upset about? Do we need to talk about certain things? Something like that just seems to jar. I don't know if it jars the memory or what it does, but he seems to open up more. And then for several days after that, it just seems that things are more of an even keel. He seems um, more ready to communicate, and I think I just did it to try it, and it seemed to it seems to make a big difference. I'm trying to figure out different ways to do things like that because it seems to work. I just wanted to throw that out there. So we've gone out to eat a couple of times, and went for ice cream back when it was above 30. So we've done that, and I wanted to say with the school thing, the charts. A lot of us are older generations. I think it's gotten too easy to label everything, and personally, I think it just takes all of the compassion out of it. I really do. So I haven't dealt much as far as teachers and charts and all that, but I can see that I wouldn't be a big fan of that at all. Um, my nephew's actually doing better this year than he did last year since he's been with me, and I thank God for that. But it's too easy to label. So you have to not only keep track of the kids, you've got to keep track of what's going on in school too with the teachers. I wouldn't want anybody labeling my kid as this or that. It's hard enough to get through the school day. That's my opinion. So my 5 cents for what it's worth.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you sharing that. I do. I really do. Yeah, I'm going to ask you be the last one for this evening as we sort of wrap up our session. And Kylie, please drop into the chat. Please feel free to contact us at the coalition for any sort of follow-up questions, comments. Right now, we have Agape from Long Island represented. We have Hudson Valley represented, Central New York, Southern Tier. Our website is always available for information sharing as well. We offer parent support groups pretty much nightly, depending upon the region. So we are available for families to continue these conversations on how do we regulate ourselves and manage the different things that are happening with our children. So Kylie, if you could just drop in all of our information, that would be great in the chat box. So Vicki, what's your thought?
My thought. I have been just in and out tonight because my daughter has been very needy this week because she has been quarantined because she had contact with someone at her school. She's 11, that had COVID last week. So she's been home all week, and but there's no remote learning. So she's just expected to do everything by herself all week without any guidance except for 1 hour a day of tutoring. And she has an IEP, and it's the only way she could get her work done is if I'm sitting right next to her the whole time, even though she's in 6th grade. And it was so stressful. She was sent home Thursday, so that's a week ago. Got 2 more days to go, almost a week ago. And I could feel it, the stress in my chest, to the point where Tuesday I ended up in the ER with chest pains, and it was really scary. And because I was putting this pressure on myself that I have to help her all the time to keep up so she doesn't fall more behind in school. And it just was really, really hard, you know, and to work from home as well on top of that. And I'm trying to learn, you know, I already meditate twice a day. I do yoga. I take walks, but I think I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it really stresses me out. Like, I want my kid to succeed, and she's not interested in that. I have to push her. And so I don't know, I'm just bringing all this up for self-regulation, I guess, just figuring out how do I keep myself from hurting myself that way, you know? Luckily, they didn't find anything with my heart, so I guess it was just anxiety. But that was exhausting. I was there for 10 hours, and I had to do all these tests, and I'm exhausted from that. I just let her do her own thing yesterday and today, and I don't know if she did it right, but that's where I'm at with it. You know, trying to figure out how to balance this, letting her find her way, but
Sometimes,
guiding her.
sometimes what we do as parents is we don't take enough time to think about ourselves in the same way we think about our children. If we think about the children that we have in our home, so many of them have so many services, this, that, and the other thing. But when you ask a parent, what are you doing? What are you getting? And generally it's nothing. Now you do talk about your yoga and the other things you do, that's all on the right path. But I think it's important for us to remember that we are the engine. And if we fall apart, it doesn't matter how much scaffolding we have around our child. We have to protect ourselves in the same way that we would for our children. If your child has an issue, you try this, and then you try that, and then you try this, and then you try that. You know what I mean? But the one thing that we're very lax about is when the anxiety or when the problem is ours, when the thing that needs to change is us. We often don't go at it with the same enthusiasm, the same energy, the same curiosity, and the same ferocity that we would and we do for our children. You know, it's important for us to recognize when, you know, we have so many years of trying to make change or see change in our children, that the one thing that we have right in front of us that's always there, we have complete control over, is us. And when we can't change them, sometimes we have to figure out ways to change the way we react to whatever they're doing. And that's about looking at us as parents with the same kind of energy that you would as you're trying to figure out, okay, I did this for my child and I got to do it, that this. There are plenty of services out there for children, and most of us are plugging into as many as we possibly can. Take some of that same energy and figure out, what can I do for me? And not just the fluffy stuff, the hard, gritty, what needs to change in order for me to find more joy in my life, and more joy from my children, and more joy from this experience. It's us. It's us. Take the time to try to do an assessment of yourself. What more can I do? And there's always more we can do. We just have to make the time for it, schedule it, put it in there, and apply it.
You know, Chester, you have a really good habit of doing this, of wrapping things up and putting like a really nice bow on it. So I appreciate that. I'm going to use the words that Elise said, word. It is about us. Nothing will change until we change it, right? So we have to figure out what that change needs to be, because we are the adults in control of that. So I thank you for that, Chester. That was a really, could not have said it better myself. And that's why we're here, to support one another. I do appreciate that. I do want to thank you all for joining us this evening. This is not the end. As I said, you have all of the information. I think Kylie dropped in our helpline information, email addresses for the directors for each of the regions. And then again, please go to our website. There's easy ways to connect to us. If there's something that you need specifically for your family, we're here for you. And we want to make sure that we give you the tools and tips you need to continue to strengthen yourselves and to strengthen your families. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Kylie for co-facilitating with me and being my Oz. And for all of my colleagues from AFFCNY who joined us this evening, thank you so much for being there. And thank you for being willing to share your stories with us and to learn a little bit more about how we support our children.